Today on the Texas Tribune Weekend Insider. After the firing of the first black police chief in Jasper, Texas, black community leaders say racial tensions are at an all-time high, while white residents say it's only a small group who are stirring the pot. Reporter Morgan Smith spent 3 days in Jasper to find out how this East Texas town is recovering since the 1998 dragging death of James Byrd Jr. Then Emily Ramshaw looks at weight loss surgery on the taxpayers tab. As the number of obese Texans has grown, so has the state and federal government's comfort with funding bariatric surgery. Will Texas lawmakers try to clamp down on spending next session?
I was in Jasper at the end of last week for about 3 days to talk to the residents there about the local drama that has been unfolding with the city council and its first black police chief, who was fired at the beginning of the week. So Rodney Pearson was fired by the city council after a group of citizens said that he was unqualified to take the job in the first place. There was a recall election. The city council members who had appointed him police chief lost their elections. Once a new city council was in place, they fired him. The important thing to know here is that these decisions were made largely along racial lines. So we had a majority black city council who put Pearson in place and a majority white city council who fired him. That has inflamed a lot of the tensions there that the community has really tried to lay to rest since the dragging death of James Byrd in 1998. I think that the community of Jasper really made efforts directly after the Byrd killing to achieve some semblance of racial harmony. A fence that was dividing whites and blacks in the town cemetery was pulled down. There were lots of candlelight vigils and meetings of community leaders to kind of talk through a lot of these racial issues that the town has had. Since then, these issues have just continued to fester, and those efforts have kind of fallen away. And for a lot of the black leaders in the community, the firing of Pearson as police chief is really just the culmination of different racial issues that they feel like are still happening in the town.
So as the ranks of the obese in Texas really have swelled over the last, decade, the state has gotten increasingly comfortable with paying for weight loss surgeries for people who are overweight. And both the state and the federal government, through Medicare and Medicaid, have really sort of ramped up their coverage of these types of surgeries: lap band surgeries, bariatric bypass surgeries. For example, Medicare in Texas over the last few years, the number of people they have covered procedures for has nearly quadrupled. For Medicaid, which covers the poor, the disabled, and even some kids, the numbers have tripled in the last several years. So there's a lot at play here. Obviously, we're seeing increasing ranks of the obese in Texas. Right now, about 2/3 of adults in Texas are considered obese or overweight. That number is about 1/3 for kids. But the state argues that they don't believe there's any fraud at play in Medicare and Medicaid of obesity surgeries. They really believe that you have to have really specific rules of whether you can get these procedures. This is really important right now because lawmakers are seeking ways to curb Medicaid spending. Obviously, we have had huge budget shortfalls in the last legislative session. They looked really closely at ways to find efficiencies in Medicaid. You could see this coming up very easily in the next legislative session as a way to sort of try to find some cost savings, particularly if there's evidence that these surgeries are being used more frequently than they ought to be.